All right, I believe the YouTube connection's now up and working.
Yes, it is. Okay.
Thanks, Terry.
But you guys should be.
Ted, I think it's all yours at this point.
All right, if everybody's ready, we're going to start a call to order this special meeting of the Borough Council to work on our budget. Do we have anybody there from the public who wishes to speak?
It's too early. We need to hear what you have to say tonight.
No problem.
Apparently not.
I'll leave the comments open. Yes, we'll go from there. So I had spoken with the borough manager to have him take a really good look at the budget and try to find some way for reductions and to spread it out as gently as possible across the entire budget, and being as gentle as possible in, the more sensitive areas of the budget. And at that point, I'll leave it up to you, Mr. Mitchell, to continue on and as to what you did.
Well, what we did essentially is we spread the pain around over various funds. On the general fund side, we're replenishing funding in the line for extra part-time police officers from last year, and we are still replenishing, but we're replenishing a lesser amount. So we'll try to replenish that more next year. We also cut down a reserve line item in that budget as well. And that brought the anticipated millage increase for the general fund to 3.35 mils. And we reduced the millage increase proposed for the public library by half a mil. So that's now at 3.50 mils. And we did the same thing with the streets fund. So those changes combined leaves us at a millage increase, proposed millage increase of 6 mils.
Quite honestly,
sorry, my voice is a little strained, but
I want to be quite honest. I did not have a chance to go over the budget. Just with the front page, seeing where the reduction was. Does anybody want to add anything? Say anything? Make any suggestions? Comments?
Go off mute. Ms. Parker, can I ask Mr. Mitchell, the 0.5 decrease in the library, how did we find that, or what did we decrease? Do you know?
Do you remember the exact line? I don't. I know we took it from one, but
it was 2 lines, but basically we really increased the books, the new book supply, and we brought that down.
Okay.
That was one of the larger ones.
Yeah, so that was material purchasing.
So we decreased that? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. And then the -1 in streets, what is the plan to, how do we get that one back, the 1 mil back? What do you propose, or what do you think will be different?
What we decreased would be the streets that we were going to try to pave and the ADA ramps.
Yeah, we took that from essentially paving and projects.
Okay. And there's a salary decrease listed from our excuse me, I'm sorry, from our last draft. I'm just wondering, is there a salary decrease somewhere or was that just I mean, it's not a lot, but the numbers are different.
What line? What fund?
Administrative. I'm sorry, administrative. It was 806, and now it's down to 789. So that's like $17,000 or thereabouts.
Oh, well, that was when we previously eliminated the GPS. The vehicle GPS tracking.
Did that come out? That came out of, well, excuse me, I'm sorry. I thought the GPS came out of the police line.
No.
No?
The vehicle GPS was always an admin.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I have a couple questions and suggestions. Scott, on the library, is there anything we can do to further reduce the millage considering the COVID-19 that's going on? I just saw the governor's releasing changes regarding closing more things back down. I think the library went to pick up only, 2 weeks ago? Given the situation's not going away anytime soon, do we have a need for staffing at the levels it is when it's open fully, as opposed to when it's just open, say, by appointment?
Well, actually, it's fully staffed, normal staff now, even though access is either electronic or front door pickup. So it doesn't really change the labor cost.
But there's no changes that could be made? That's the question I'm asking.
Yeah, if you want to reduce operating hours at the library, we can reduce labor costs.
I have to ask, though, is that going to be a significant difference? Because we looked into this a couple of years ago. This was one of the things we looked at every department, obviously. And this was one of the areas we looked at and said, well, you have part-timers not making a whole lot of money to begin with. What's the benefit to not having the access to it? And at the time, I recall the benefit just wasn't there to take away the benefit financially really wasn't there to take away a service that people do still use. So the question then would be, what would the net result be of that? Is it even worth looking at? Are we talking about a couple $1,000s? Are we talking about a substantial amount of money?
Yeah. Financially, it would be a low yield proposition.
Is the library, I mean, they're doing door pickup, so are they doing a pretty good, lack of a better word, business?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm in touch with them almost every day. They're busy. They have a lot going on. We're hoping that there's not going to be a total closure, but don't know for sure yet.
Okay, I figured I would just ask the question given the circumstances of the virus. At 6 mills, anything's going to help. Another couple comments I have in looking over this budget. At 6 mills, we're looking to increase taxes roughly 15%. Given anything we increase taxes, I think we should consider increases to the fee schedule. Going up, the taxes going up are relative to everything else. If the taxes go up, whatever the fees are being charged for, the cost of that goes up. I think they should go up. May not be the exact same number, but it's something to consider, increasing them to offset the increase in taxes. People who use it pay user fees, basically. And on the same line of thinking, I was looking at the recreation fund. If that's going up 23%, I think that the people who are using the recreation fund, including Morrisville Little League, should be charged a little more for use of the park. If our costs go up, we need some users. And in this case, only, I'd say a rough guess, 25-30% of the users are actual taxpayers, and the majority are not. So, I mean, they would have to pick up some of the slack, I would think.
Yeah, if I could,
that. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. If I was going to say the same thing, if I could just add to that, I know there's been some discussion, at least it's been at least brought up, that we should be cutting back on the fees. But I just want to remind everybody that we did have a professional audit those fees at the time, and this is going back, 2 years at this point. And the fees were not only set just to get us closer to our neighbors. In some cases it's higher, in some cases it's lower, but it was really an audit of what is it costing us to process these. So if we cut back, we're actually going to create more of a deficit, right? To Justin's point, if our cost of processing is going up, it should be at least somewhat equated to the processes that those folks are working on. So I would have to agree with Justin that there should be some kind of adjustment to those fees to compensate for the adjustment in costs.
I was just going to add that the recreation fee is the recreation fund is the one fund that you are able to move slightly versus any of the others that are standard, and there is no movement. So it's just something to keep in mind.
One more comment I had in looking over this. I went back to a November memo from Scott talking about the budget. And I know we talked about it briefly, and I think it was worth revisiting, being a 3.35 mil increase in the general fund. The MMA currently pays us $650,000 a year. Now, I went back and pulled all the budgets from 2012 on. In 2012, the MMA paid us $600,000. In 2014, it went up to $625,000. In 2018, it went up to $650,000. So at some point in 2012, the MMA and the borough agreed that $600,000 was a reasonable amount. Given that, from 2012 to 2021, it's increased $50,000 or 8.3% over 9 years. That's roughly 0.05% per year it's increased. Now, as you can imagine, our costs for labor, for health benefits for those people, for utilities and everything else hasn't really gone down. It's almost all gone up. So I looked at a number of scenarios where from 2012 on, if that $600,000 was escalated at 3% per year to next year, that amount would be $782,000. If it were escalated at 4% per year, it would be $862,000. And if it were escalated at 5% per year, it would be $930,000. Scott's memo, he had requested or suggested that we, bear with me when I look up his language, increase the contract amount to $800,000 for next year with 5% increases every year thereafter automatically to adjust for inflation, labor, and all those other costs that previously mentioned. That being said, I'd like to propose that we tell the MMA that we want $850,000 and 5% per year going forward. At $862,000 at 4% per year, that's still a little less than what it would have been at 4% per year, which is a very fair figure to increase year over year for the last 10 years. I know I'm going to get some kickback from this because you're going to say the MMA will never go for it. I can tell you I know currently one member who will agrees with this line of thinking. Ted's another member. I don't know what his thoughts are on it. I'd like to hear him now. But I will remind you, come December or January, we do have another appointment up on the MMA. That would, if Ted were in favor of this, that would give 3 out of 5 members of the board who would then be in favor of this to make sure it happens. I'll stop with that. If anybody has any questions on my figures, I'd be happy to answer them.
And Justin, I'll just interrupt you and say I don't know that we could say they'd be in favor of it, but be open to listen to it and they'd be willing to acknowledge it, right?
If I can add something also, I agree. I mean, we fought for that extra $50,000 back in 2012, but I will tell you that our budget as it stands shows us under the water line at $717,000, which is really a true figure. So you've already put yourself 67,000 behind, which is a whole mill before you even begin, on the hopes that I guess we get some extra cash flow.
Well,
So
if that's the case, I didn't look at the budget line item for this before doing it. Then I think that gives us justification to step up closer to the 5% per year and ask for $900,000 a year, or 930 in this case, which is what $600,000 escalated from 2012 to 2021 at 5% would be.
Well, I just want to add something. Just remember that I believe it was last year, or it may have been the year before. I'm not 100% sure. We took on some additional costs for materials under the water portion of it. So it actually the reimbursement is closer. Well, we took on the cost, so it's more like 700,000. I'm not opposed to it, but just remember one thing: that increasing the amount that the MMA gives us, in turn, will increase rates. So it's still going to cost the residents and and MMA users additional money. It has to come from somewhere. They don't, there's no.
We're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Exactly. And
but at the same token, I don't want to interrupt, Ted, but just to comment on that. At the same token, if the MMA if these are charges, if we're already up over $650,000 and we just want what we're charging to it, then the borough should be entitled to that, whether it comes out of our borough taxpayers or the water authority users' pocket.
I am not opposed to the MMA giving us additional funds to cover the cost of using our employees, but it needs to be, the numbers are one-sided. They're coming just from us, and there's some dispute there as to the accuracy of the numbers. But I'm not opposed to asking for additional, because you have to realize insurance goes up every year. We have labor contracts with our employees, and they go up 3% per year. So I'm not opposed to it. We just have to. We'll have to make a formal request through the borough manager, and I guess we can address it at the next MM meeting next Thursday.
If I could. Option number 2 would be we're getting $650,000. This is what I had said last year. We're getting $650,000. They spend up to $650,000, then they have no access to anyone. I talked about that last year because I think it's kind of double dipping, right? If I'm paying my water bill and I'm getting hit in my taxes for the water bill. And when we talk about rates going up, you have to remember the client base for the MMA is much larger than just the borough, so it's getting spread out much further than just the houses that we have here. But again, if it's not amicable that it's increased, I don't see why we would budget a dime more than what we're getting, which is $650,000, which all by itself brings that budget down an entire mill.
Thank you, Mike.
If I may. I, for one, myself, I don't know enough about the MMA's budget to just go and say, okay, MMA, you have to fork over more cash. So that's something that we would have to Ted and on the board and the MMA people would know. As far as the tax increase goes, it's 15%. This is my first year up here. Now, I know in the past couple of years, taxes didn't go up. That doesn't mean that costs didn't go up. And again, it's, I'm not going to beat on the past and beat on a dead horse, but if taxes were raised, if there was less politics taken out of running this borough and it was actually run like a business, the taxes would have gone up last year. They would have gone up the year before. They would have gone up the year before. You figure if you would have raised them 3% a year for the last 4 years, where we're at right now, instead of raising them a little bit each year, we went a few years and now, boom, it's a big tax increase. Now, 15% to a, could be construed as a big number, but we also have to keep in mind is there's two entities in town that are taxing the residents: the school board and the school and the borough. It currently costs me around $2 a day in my property taxes that go to the borough to live in my house, which is a pretty good bargain. It's a good deal. I mean, I can't complain. So 15%, now next year it's going to cost me $2.30 to live in my house. So that's the 15% on me with a 15% increase. And again, I mean, the taxes weren't raised for the past couple of years, and you can't cut and expect things to work out. Well, the 15% here on the bottom.
If I could,
4.6 overall.
I would agree. I would agree with those statements if cutbacks weren't made to balance the budget in prior years. So you're saying costs escalated, but cutbacks were made specifically to be able to balance the budget without tax increases. So it's not like we just ignored increases and didn't raise taxes. We made very difficult decisions to cut back costs to balance the budget without a tax increase.
Correct, but last year there was an incredibly difficult decision that should have been made that wasn't. It was recommended by the borough manager. Last year it was a recommended tax increase that was voted no on. I wasn't here. I didn't have part of that. I wasn't part of that budget.
Where was the last couple of years, though, Mr. Robinson? You just said last few years. Now we're going to last year alone. So
right.
That's a little bit different. First of all, you're talking about 1 year. And remember, the reason why nothing was increased and there was suggestions based on projects that weren't increased because the prior council was certain that the new council was going to continue those projects. So to raise taxes on the taxpayer without a solid understanding of where those monies were going to be spent, it just wasn't a good fiscal policy in a lot of our opinion.
But it was also not a good political policy last year to raise it before the election.
It wouldn't have mattered either way. That wasn't anyone's goal or anyone's intentions because it wasn't even talked about or done until after the elections. If you recall, Mr. Robinson, we waited until after the elections to do it, to take the politics out of it.
48 hours.
Mr. Parker, if I can just, let's hope this entire meeting isn't about, what we could have, should have, would have done. But I will make one notation, Mike. If you go back a few years, a lot of your projects, they were funded by trash. By large trash numbers that were collected that finally came to fruition.
Grants. They were funded by grants.
They were funded by trash delinquent monies that came in. A lot of that.
You're talking about the $200,000 overage the 1 year you're talking about, correct?
No, in fact, if you look at the figures, it was up to $500,000. And when the audit was done last year, they also said, if you remember, when we sat in the audit in August of this year, we had a $596,000 figure that wasn't. What
was that
there.
Figure, Nancy? Please let everybody know what that figure was.
The bottom line.
You keep calling it a deficit. It was a spending. It was a difference in spending, right? But it was because of the grants that came in. So we spent more than we budgeted, remember? But we had the grants that we spent that money. There was no actual financial deficit. Remember, we talked about this.
But we must stop. We don't have any money for matching grants this year. And I think that we need to. So if you want to go back to projects again, I think that this is not a year for projects, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. So then it's a good thing we didn't raise taxes for those projects, I would argue.
Well, I agree with that. Yes. So where do we stand now? Is everybody satisfied with the 6 mil versus the 8? And do we still need to go to the county?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Well, under the budget we have in front of you tonight, we would have to petition the Court of Common Pleas to exceed the millage cap. Yes.
Right. And so we need to get on that docket soon. So I think we need to make a decision.
Well, we have
unless you want to be testifying on New Year's Eve, we should probably try to nail this down.
We need to nail it down tonight, Scott, or does the 21st still put us on track to be on time?
No, the 21st, as long as we adopt the budget on the 21st, we should be good.
Okay, because I do like Mr. Bauer's suggestions about reaching out to the MMA. Just because I sit on the board, I don't want to do that alone. I know Ms. Berger's sitting in the audience, and she sits on it with me as well. I think a formal request is in order. I just want to remind everybody that they're an entity unto themselves, whether I'm on the board or not, and there becomes a tipping point at which they may consider having their own labor force, and at what point does it become too much for them to pay out? I know there's other repercussions that could happen, which has a whole nother set of issues with it, but I'm not opposed to asking a more fairer amount from them at this point. Are we asking? I don't. Justin, what was the number you came up with at the?
I came up with 850,000.
That sounds to me. It's a good starting point. I mean,
Well, we shouldn't take anything less than 717 because that's what's in our budget.
let's start high, and the board can negotiate it.
Yeah.
But just we need to have some kind of Justin's formula is the way we need to present it. So I hope the administration was listening to that. To list the escalation in costs on behalf of the borough in providing them both space, and we have to remember that they share space with us and cost.
Yeah, not all of it's about labor costs. Some of it has to do with, rent and prime real estate within the municipal building and utilities and, yeah.
And use of the machinery and
Yes.
just even the copier.
They truly share a building. They just don't occupy an office or two. So
if anyone needs a little lightheartedness, I'll say we can put in bathroom fees, and it'd be $1 for number one, $2 for number two to flush.
I'm not opposed to asking for a higher number and let the board talk about it at the next meeting, which is next Thursday, and go from there.
I'm pretty certain that they are not. This would not be news to the MMA.
It is not, because I've also mentioned.
Yeah. So in conversations in the community as well. So I'm sure they've been mulling it over and waiting for us to ask. So
if I may, we have an old plant right now that requires probably a lot more maintenance than a new facility would. We should keep in mind now it's 2020, and probably 5 years there's going to be a new plant that's going to be opened, and if that new plant is running and nothing breaks and everything's going good, it's a double-edged sword. The MMA could come back and 5-6 years from now and say, listen, that $600,000 or $700,000 or $800,000 we're giving you, we don't need you. We don't need your people as much anymore. We're only going to give you $300,000 or $400,000. That's going to be coming. That's if we have a 10-year plan, that's going to have to be in the 10-year plan, because that money's not going to last forever.
That's the point I was
correct.
I'm sorry.
But don't
the
they need us for board members and for their DEP plan? Like, yeah. we need to sign off on their DEP plan. Like, how do they get us to do that if they're not going to cooperate with us and they're going to cut us off? Like, there's more to this, guys, than they have all the power. They don't. We decide who their board is, and we sign off on their plan.
In addition to Scott, they have their own maintenance people that repair their facilities. They've utilized Public Works for tearing up pipes in the road.
Yeah, our personnel don't work on either of the plants. Our personnel work on, first there's the front office functions, but then also in terms of out on the street, it's really dealing with the aging infrastructure in terms of their pipelines.
Okay, I stand corrected, because the aging infrastructure is only going to age more, and yeah, so.
And it's going to get longer because it's got to go from here to Falls.
Right. Yep. Flush twice. It's a long way to Falls.
Now, I want to address the comment about the board members and that. I may be a board member for the MMA and also a council member, but when I sit there at or attended virtually, at that point I am an MMA board member, and I don't go in there with the thinking, well, I have all the power. I was appointed by council, whether I be a private citizen when I finally leave the board. When you sit there, your purpose is to serve the users of the MMA's product, which is water and sewer services. We need to, and I agree with Mr. Robinson, that we need to realize that that is not an indefinite revenue source. They are a municipal agency unto themselves. They need us for things, but we can't also say we're going to strong on them because we hold some cards over their head, some power. It should be fair, and anyone who sits on that board should realize that there's an expense to the borough, and they also serve the borough. They serve the residents. They are a municipal authority, for this borough and some of the surrounding area, but mostly for this borough. And when they cost us revenue, cost us money, then they need to reimburse us fairly. And that's what they should do. And the board members should do it out of their consciences, as to where they're hurting the borough with not reimbursing us properly, and vote accordingly that way, and not just feel that we have control and power over them because we see people on their board. But like I said, I support asking for additional revenue. It has to be hashed out among the board members and the administration of the MMA. And so that's it. That's my little. I
think if I could add, Mr. Parker, that I think it's been a mutually beneficial relationship over the years.
Absolutely, and they will be the first ones to admit, the use of the building, the access to the public, the savings that comes with not having a full-time labor force on their books, and as long as we provide them with accurate and numbers and predictions, they should pay it. It's that simple. I have no.
And I also don't think that we're being piggish in our request. I think the number I put forward in my memo to you all, which was a couple of weeks ago, I believe, but I think it was the same figures we cited in 2018. I don't think they're unreasonable. But yeah, certainly everything's negotiable.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Can we go back to fees for just a second, or not at this moment? It's up to you.
This isn't a, the meeting is a work session, so everybody should up and say what.
Actually, Mike and Justin have both suggested, raising the fees. Just to be aware, well, two things, actually. Once I had suggested that if we're going to be keeping Keystone in our building, that we should be charging them rent. And at that time, the comment was, well, if you charge them rent to be there, the fees will raise. So, which is the same concept you're using with MMA, if they're using our building. But I'd also like to say that the fees, you can only charge a fee for how much it actually, to the penny, charges that you're being charged for that service. You cannot, per the borough code, you cannot charge more or make it more more beneficial,
profitable.
So if it's a $60 fee, you can't charge $65. You can't even charge. You're not supposed to charge even $61. So I just want us to keep that in mind. So,
if I could just add on to that, I think the realignment that we did of the fee schedule over, I forget if it was 3 or 4 revisions over the course of a year and a half, brought us current with standards in other municipalities. And I think in some cases there was some rate shock because our fees had been in a number of areas too low for too long without adjustment. So I think it's more realistic. I'm a little hesitant about doing another wholesale increase across the board just because we just went through that exercise, although we did adjust some in related to sanitation anyway in the fee schedule you just adopted. But I think if we go too high too fast with the fees, it also encourages some people to go underground and do work and bypass normal procedure, although some people do that anyway. And then we've got to chase after them to catch them, which actually is more expensive to do than if they were cooperative to begin with. So you have to keep that in mind as well.
I get your point, Scott, but where does it turn into what we had before, where it's 20 years later and we haven't adjusted fees? We either have to come up with something, whether it's, I mean, if we're going to raise taxes 10%, I'm not saying make a 10% fee increase. Maybe it's 5%, maybe it's 6% or 3%. But I mean, if our costs are going up, then the cost of everything we do for fees is probably 95% chance it's going up as well.
But also keep in mind that there's more to the fee than the fee, if you will. For example, a simple UNO permit is $75. Well, personally, I think that's too low. They're usually about 100 or 150. But keep in mind that for every UNO, you have to get a heater cert, a chimney cert, and you have these certs, are $100 and $150 a piece just to get those. So you're at $500 almost just to get a UNO permit issued. So I hear your point. I just I think we might be getting a little too aggressive on fee increases, and we should probably wait and reconsider that next year.
Okay.
I would not be if we're going to be raising taxes to 6 mils this year. I'm not really in favor of visiting the fee schedule, but that's just me. Unless there's something really glaring that is way off balance.
Well, that's why I brought it up. I mean, we're looking for revenue everywhere. I might as well bring it up for discussion, and if it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't go anywhere.
I was going to actually, I agree with you. I mean, do we want to have so many years we I guess re-audit or reevaluate the rate fees? I mean, to keep them with the rest of the surrounding area and costs for providing services these cover.
Yeah, we actually review the fee schedule annually in late summer before we present council with a draft in it in early fall. I think usually September or October, because I think it's usually on your agenda for the October meeting. But that's been an annual exercise that we have been doing ever since we went through the realignment a couple of years ago.
That's good.
Thank you, Scott. But I would also mention maybe some of the fees didn't go up, to very high, but they were always reviewed, and try to keep it in line with your, with what is respectable.
Yes.
Lack of a better term. It's not like they just sat on a shelf and no one ever. You have to look them over, review them, and vote on them every year. So, as Scott said, it is an exercise that's been done all along. There aren't years that were skipped. So, do you need a motion here somewhere, or what's everybody's pleasure? What's going on?
Well, we're going to vote on it on the 21st, and that will give enough time to do what they need to do if they need to go to court or not. At this point, I asked Scott to have him and Mike go over it and try to eke out 2 mills. We know there's cost increase. I mean, there's a fixed cost increase, two or three of them. There's insurance, there's labor, and supplies and stuff like that, which has increased because of COVID this year. And do we want to? Are we okay with this? Do we want to try to squeeze out more out of the budget? I mean, what's everybody's pleasure?
I'd like to see us get a commitment from the MMA for more money.
Okay.
Well, I'm hoping, like, I guess we're just directing Scott to do that now, right? I mean, you don't need a motion for that, right?
No.
It's just administrative.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't need a motion. I can do that. And the only thing I'd suggest to you, if we try to squeeze more out of this 6 mills where we're at, it's just more we're adding on to the problem for next year.
Exactly.
So keep that in mind too.
So Scott, I have a question. The one sheeter that you provided that I had given you with some questions, and then you have comments here. I'm looking specifically only because I can see it. The electric, you said it was adjusted to actual, but in the previous budget, that electric was $71,000 and now it's $79,000. So what does that mean, adjusted to actual, and why did that go up?
We were already spending that amount on that line, so we adjusted the budget to reflect reality.
Well, you're saying year to date, you've only spent $47,000.
Right, that may be as of October, but that's our projection for the remainder of the year, based on the actual run rate so far.
So why would electric, so the budget last year was 61,000, and last year to date, it was 44,000, so it's right on target. Why would electric go up $20,000?
Can you give us the code for that line? Because we can give you the history.
I don't really know.
Oh.
Oh, I guess it's there on that column. Sorry.
It's okay. 02434-361. Can you check that out?
What is it again, Scott? 02?
I didn't bring my computer up. 02, could this be smaller? 02434-361. It's under street lighting expense.
And is it possible to get this budget with the November numbers? When are the November?
Oh yeah, we will continue to update it.
When will
So
that
when
be?
we close November, which will probably be tomorrow or Monday, something like that. It depends on when we get the monthly report from the tax collector for revenue. We will update it to as of end of November. So you'll see that before your December 21 meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you take the year-to-date, which is your 52, almost $53,000, you see that?
Yeah.
You divide that by 8 and then times it by 12.
Well, but why is it last year the annual was 61,000 and now it's nearly 80,000?
I can go back and redig into that line and look at the history for the last 5 years.
Yeah, we can send you.
Like I would have thought with the controls, Johnson controls, that the electric would not be going up, but would be going down. It's the street lights, correct? That this is the electric for?
Yes.
So I'm not sure with the LED why electric is going up 20 grand.
I will dig into it.
Yeah, we'll find out because that fund has a history of having gone overspending on an annual basis.
Okay.
But we'll get you the history and send it to you.
So the other thing, increased technology costs, which are in office supplies and printing, that's just has to do with switching to the new system, correct?
Yeah, that's Edmunds, Tracer, AMS, and other things, yeah.
Is there a way to pull that out and have a separate line item? Because then next year when we're looking at that, it's going to be...
Oh, well, yeah, actually, now that we've converted to Edmunds, I'd like to break out some of our line items because there's just way too much mixed and mingled, if you will, on different lines.
Yeah.
And it's it's tough to gauge the reality
Correct.
without being a detective.
Correct.
So now that we're in the new system, once training and conversion is done, we actually intend to break out some of those line items into separate categories.
And the same, I guess, for the chief would say that police technology expense, PD technology upgrades, it went from 10,000 to 15,000. I guess that's the same thing. Are you doing something?
No, actually, I believe, Chief, that's for your mobile data terminals, isn't it?
We continually replace all our electronics almost every year. And as we move on, we put other cameras up. You know, a good camera costs $1,500. So, you know, we like to try to keep with the latest technology that's out there.
Yeah, I think the line she's referring to was the one that you said was for the MDTs, though.
I think the one she's referring to is the last one in our police technology expense, 731.
Yes.
Yeah, they're.
Okay.
We use, you know, we replace our computers, our MDTs, our cameras that are on the street. There's a lot of technology involved in police work, and that's where we, you know, $10,000 isn't enough.
Okay, that's fine. I was just asking.
It should be more like $50,000.
And so one other thing, Chief, the overtime for the officers, I know it was reduced, but I know that you're going to be back at full staff. Is there any way to reduce that at all for next year?
How much is it this year?
I can't flip through. It's 119 as the budget for next year. I think it was less than that for this year and the prior year.
Okay, so usually you're speaking of extra part-time police, not overtime.
Extra part-time police, correct. You're at 100.
You said the overtime.
I'm sorry, I meant extra part-time.
Okay. The question is?
So it's 78,000 year to date. Last year it was at 61. They have it annualized at 109, and next year the budget is 119. So is that a real number, or is there a way we can reduce that slightly?
You can reduce anything you really want to. I don't know what next year is going to bring. I have officers that are, you know, they have a lot of vacation time, a lot of paid time. I try to use the part-timers as much as possible, but then you look at the overtime for the full-timers, and we're maxed out on that pretty much. But we're getting more money in that line next year.
Plus, keep in mind that the police department has two officers on workers' comp, so the others are having to fill in time-wise.
I thought they were both, well, the one is, I don't know who the second one is, but the one is coming back, no?
We don't know the status of either one at this point.
Okay. All right. I'm only asking because there is an increase for the residents, so if there's things that we can jiggle.
That's up to you guys.
Mr. Parker, can I ask a question? Scott, at the beginning when we started, I think one of the things...
Do you think that's a real number?
Excuse me?
Do you think that's a real number? Like, is that a good number?
I think the whole budget's low for the police department. So is that a real number? Yeah. You gotta leave enough personnel, enough money on the table to do this.
Okay. All right.
Question for Mr. Mitchell, I'm sorry. At the beginning, when Mr. Mitchell was explaining the increases and decreases, he had said that they were going to replenish money for more part-time police. So because some was taken out, I just wanted to point that out because that was something he mentioned early on. Whether that reflects your question or not, I don't know.
Yeah, just to be clear, we're replenishing some money that was reduced last year.
Right.
We were intending to fully replenish it and put it back at, I believe, 122,000. So we're going to partially replenish it this year and hopefully be in a position to try to replenish the rest next year.
If I remember correctly, also, I think there's only a $42 difference between last year's police budget and this year's police budget. It's like under $100, whatever it is. So,
No, I think the current year police budget is like 1.933 million. Am I right about that, or did I just make that up?
1988.
Oh, 1988. Yeah, and the current one I believe is over 2 million. 2 million mark.
2042.
Yeah, 2042. Yeah.
okay. So where is he?
What else? So, Scott, you're going to prepare something official to give to the MMA?
Yes.
Okay. So is everyone good with this until the 21st? And we'll have heard back. I'll send an email out after the end of the MMA. If we have a number, I'll let everyone know. Everyone okay with it for the 21st? And
I have a question for Scott on the official correspondence to the MMA. Did we do that last year as well?
No, we did it in 2018. I sent a request to the executive director after speaking with him verbally, and we also provided a draft of a revised agreement.
Okay, so I just want to make the point that we're doing the same thing we did before. I mean, I think we need to have a little more follow through on it. It seems like it fell behind the wayside before. The amount that we should be getting is only getting farther away from what we are getting every year. I think we need to stay on top of this and work out what works for both of us.
I'm going to bring something up that I guess Justin and I probably think about it, but I know nothing's going to happen or change. But I've approached the Bridge Commission also as being an entity partner. And they do have 3 bridges, which impacts us. And but there's no money coming from the Bridge Commission. So at this time, unless someone knows something I don't know, but I will say that it's a topic of conversation every now and then if I'm able to squeeze it in, because I do believe that our town is impacted by these 3 bridges. And there was a time some years ago when the agreement was that at least they would do some street sweeping on Pennsylvania Avenue, Delmore, and those areas. But that's kind of gone by the wayside. But maybe this is something. I know it may be trivial considering we need money, not cleaner streets, but it does help. So maybe this is something at some point in time, Scott gets to have a conversation with them. Maybe I don't know. They're actually moving out for the most part of town anyway, and so there's going to be a lot of changes in the future. So that's something that just to be aware of, which I'm sure that it's not news to anybody.
Well, they might be moving out, but they still have the salt building that they just built.
Correct. That might be the last thing standing. So.
Oh no, you haven't seen the new building they're going to build.
Yeah. Well, the building that sits there now is not what you're going to be looking at in the future. So.
Is that coming down?
Yes.
And they're going to build something in its place?
Yes. Won't be as large though, but it probably would have started earlier today. I mean, this year, Justin can correct me on that, if it hadn't been for COVID and some other things. So the salt shed and the brine tower were more important at this time.
While we're talking about the Bridge Commission, not that this is really budgetary and going to get us any money, but Nancy or Justin, would you be able to maybe pull on someone's ear down there and do something about that little Robert Morris sign monument that just looks like crap? There's like a sign of where Robert Morris lived or his house or something, and it's like 10 feet in the air, and there's a chain link fence in front of it, about a foot in front of it. I don't know who did that whole thing down there, but that just looks.
That was many years ago when there was actually, that was just done many years ago when there were actually just trees there.
The fence was just put up, Nance.
Oh, no, the fence, yes.
Robert Morris plaque was up there, but they put up a fence that is, and I think they elevated the Robert Morris plaque, and it just looks horrible. You can't even read the line.
Okay.
Whoever did that basically was probably in a hurry to get home that day. It looks like something you would do on a Friday afternoon. It just looks horrible. Like that's someone that has, I'm not going to say that doesn't have pride in their job, but that's whoever did that. And they might very well not even live in Morrisville, don't care about Morrisville, but they have absolutely zero pride in Morrisville, whoever did that work. It's atrocious.
Did you get an answer back from?
He's been relocated.
No, it's not that. I have a feeling that with the construction contract there, the contractor probably took it out to do something and just threw it back in. I did involve our community affairs director with it a few months ago. I said, hey, what are we doing with this sign? And she didn't even realize it was there. She was going to look into it. So I'll get back in touch with her, and I'm sure they'll make it right.
Talking about the Bridge Commission, if I can make a suggestion, they pay $1 million a year every year to the state police to control their bridges, from our bridges up to Scudder's Falls. Obviously, we can't control the ones in Scudder's Falls, but the 3 bridges that we do have here, if they do it by third, we could bring in $330,000 if they would just give us the control of the 3 bridges here. And in actuality, we respond to the accidents on the bridge and all the incidents well before any response time from the state police. This is something I've spoken to the executive director about. I've spoken to him about a lot of different things, but he is not in favor of anything like this, whether it's a political thing between the governors or whatever, but we respond to the accidents, we evacuate the wounded and, from the auto accidents, and we have about a 15 to 20 minute response time from the state police. By the time they show up, we have everything done. So that could be something that everybody, the political powers to be may want to discuss with, either the governor or Russ to see whether that could be something that could be worked out for the future.
Do you have any stats on that, Chief? Like how many accidents happen on the bridges? How many times you guys are there before they are?
We don't handle the accidents, so we don't keep those stats.
But you said that you guys are there before the state police.
Right, but we don't handle them, so we don't make reports on them.
Yeah,
we evacuate the people, we secure the scene, and we wait for them finally to show up.
And they report and they get credit for it, and it's like we were never there.
Yeah, do you have anything that we can take to them and say, look, there were 500 times that we were there before you guys?
I don't have any of that.
Can you do that going forward? So that we have some kind of data that we can start having a conversation with them?
It's even in the records. It's in the records of the Bridge Commission, because every time there's a radio transmission, it says Morrisville PD on the scene. So, but if I could just go back for a moment, those bridges are under the auspices of Homeland Security, which is why we are in the situation where the state police on both sides, $1 million from both Jersey and Pennsylvania, pay the Bridge Commission. So, and it's a Homeland Security issue. So if we're going to take it anywhere or politically, we have to go pretty high.
Okay.
I'm sure the city of Trenton would make the identical argument that Morrisville Borough would make and say, let's do that with Trenton PD.
Well, first time I see them,
I'll find that out because I have never seen them respond to an accident up on the bridge. Nancy, have you?
No, not on the bridges. No, maybe on
They
the closer
probably
to the
refuse
ramp.
to do it because it's not their jurisdiction.
Right, but I have a tough time when someone's hurt up on the bridge that we don't respond, or when the bridge calls us for a jumper or whatever like that, we're there.
Right.
Or anything like that. So it is unfair that we're burdened with that without any kind of compensation when the state police get compensated for it all.
Yeah, there's been a couple times in the past over the last 10, 15, 20 years where, Nancy, you can probably see it from your toll booth where where there's a major rescue box, say on the curve up by Snipes or somewhere, maybe a mile or two into Morrisville Borough, and one of our cars is up on Route 1 blocking something, and another one of our cars is down on Pennsylvania Avenue blocking something. And we only have 2 cars running, so that leaves the whole rest of the borough. There's 0 police coverage because we're tied up with the bridge. That's not supposed to be our responsibility. So I've seen it, George.
You're right.
I've seen it
Yeah.
all the time. So,
And Nance, I've never seen a New Jersey state trooper pass the toll booth doing anything other than coming over to get lottery tickets for cigarettes.
Or eat at LaVilla.
So my question then is, does anybody pay us for work that we do on Pennsylvania Avenue or Delmore Avenue, a state highway? George, if the commissioner weren't there, that property would be owned by PennDOT and we'd be patrolling it anyway.
well, I'm sorry. What was the question?
Who pays us to patrol Pennsylvania PennDOT highways? Pennsylvania Avenue, North Bridge Street. Because if the bridge commissioner wasn't there, it would be a PennDOT highway, and you would be patrolling it anyway, with no compensation.
Yeah, but it's in our town. It's not owned by. It's still in our town, so it's our roads. So if you don't want to ask, I'm fine with it. Or we could actually do what the trend does, and we don't respond at all, and we leave it to the state police. I'm fine with that too. But if there's a cash cow there that the state police are getting it, but we're doing the work, wouldn't that be something that you want to look at? If you don't want to look at it, I'm okay with it. We'll continue the practice that we have.
I'm interested in looking into it. Do you know who to contact? Like, do you know, like,
What, from the bridge?
No, not from the bridge, from the state police. Is it the guy that is in charge at Trevos?
He's not going to be able to help you. This is well above him. This is between.
That's what I said. You need to go all the way.
Nancy, I'm
In fact,
asking
how do
the
you know-
chief.
You got to go to Rusta, and then you got to go well above him. And if it's being controlled by the Homeland Security money, then that goes down to Washington.
So it would be like it's talking to the state reps.
Yes.
I think that's probably a good start.
Okay. And we have no way of knowing anything how many times we were answering calls on the bridge.
No, we don't track those.
Yeah, but there's no way to go backwards, like Nancy said, looking at something to see how many times we responded.
It's no, I can't give you that information, but it's a known fact. This isn't something that they're going to go, oh no, you guys never come up here. It's a known fact.
Yeah, it's just nice when you have numbers.
Yeah, it is.
I could estimate those numbers to be 2 or 3 times a week. Times 365. That's one shift.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. So, you could be talking 3,000 times in a year. But I know we did get off track there. But I don't know, maybe they can, because we're not going to do the street sweeper this year. We have no money for that. So maybe they could, clean the streets a little bit in the surrounding areas. That's all I have.
All right. Anybody else? Because otherwise I'm going to open public comment.
Yeah. If I may, Ted, I want to thank, and I can't thank enough, Scott Mitchell for squaring away this Zoom.
Absolutely.
Nancy and Bob and Mike and Justin and Ted, you have absolutely no idea how awesome it sounds in this room right now for this meeting tonight. I can't get over, this is awesome. I could sit here and talk about this for the next 8 hours. It sounds so good in here. I'm not going to, but I could.
Yeah,
But
we're not going to let
thank
you.
you again. This Zoom meeting at this Borough Hall is so squared away right now. I could hear everybody loud and clear. There's no feedback. It's the video board up there looks good with everybody on it. And thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Great job.
There were a lot of people involved in it. I was just the dictator behind it. So,
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with Scott this afternoon, I think it was, and I had told him this is what because I had asked whether or not our meeting would look like the presentation did the other day, and he said if that's what we wanted, and I said yes, because that's what I envisioned it should look like watching it at home or online or whatever. And the sound is a whole nother issue, but just the look and the feeling of being at the meeting and seeing everybody. I'm kind of like a little taken back by my big head filling up the screen so much, but it's what I envisioned, and it hit it right on the mark. And Scott said he was just the dictator, but it came together, and it's exactly what we needed and wanted. So I appreciate
you're coming through loud and clear. Like I could hear everybody really good, but Mike with the headset, like I brought my headset tonight thinking I was going to have to go through this again, and I didn't even need to use it. But that mic that you're using, Mike, that you're really coming through clear. But no, this meeting everything sounds good.
And I could actually.
And by the way, if you didn't catch it, the Select Morrisville developer presentation Monday night the 7th, all of that was run through this room, through the borough Zoom account, all the live streaming, the cable channel, everything. So that was kind of like a dress rehearsal for this meeting and then your upcoming meeting on the 21st. So we had our fingers crossed Monday night to make sure everything went well, given the number of people that were paying attention to that project. And my arithmetic is correct. We had over 300 people participate or view that presentation during the live session portion of the presentation. And then, of course, the recording of the presentations posted afterward for people to view later. But we had over 300 people either in the Zoom room for that meeting or viewing through another platform. So that was good to see.
Nice.
I actually watched that on my television through the YouTube app, and it was perfect. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better presentation. All right. I don't mean to rush anybody, but is there anything else anybody wants to add? We know we want Mr. Mitchell to go ahead and contact the MMA with our desires and our requests. So are we okay till the 21st?
Yeah, I am.
I think so. Yes.
Yep.
I do have not with the budget, but if we have a future involvement with the public on the development of the park, are we going to limit the commentary and the ideas just to Morrisville residents, or are the LMT residents allowed to put their 2 cents in?
Well, it was a developer's presentation to the community, primarily the Morrisville community, but it is a public meeting. We couldn't restrict participation by people from Lower Makefield Township or from Falls Township necessarily. I don't know. I was on the meeting for its duration. I don't remember who was on from Lower Makefield Township.
There were quite a number of people they were from MML.
From Little League, yeah.
Yeah. So they made and the only reason I ask is because their views kind of skew some of the ideas that Morrisville may have. So when they start talking about like, oh, we use the park a lot, that's just an example. I'm not saying that that's true, but that may not be true, and maybe the park isn't used a lot. So I think going forward, we need to have people identify if they live in Morrisville or not. And that's just my opinion, so that we get a true idea of what Morrisville residents want for the park.
All right. Anyone else?
One quick comment for future meetings like this. Scott, did people have the ability to call in to provide public comment?
No. When council chambers is open, we don't usually make Zoom available to the public to participate. Although they can see of course, through the website and the YouTube channel. If council chambers was closed, like back in the spring, of course, we make the Zoom option available. But ultimately, that's up to council. If council wants to, we can.
I think it's something we should consider because there are people who don't want to leave their house because of COVID.
Yeah, I agree.
Is there any way for them to participate by one of the call-in numbers and not necessarily be on the actual Zoom where we see them popping up and everything?
Yeah, I think the concern you might have is the potential to be what's called Zoom bombed and your meeting gets hijacked. That can be a problem. But if we make the call-in option through Zoom available to people, they can just as easily use that exact same information to log on to the video conference portion. We could, as a separate matter, which is something we did a couple of times back in the spring, is make the conference call line available for people to call in just as like a phone call. But then the problem you have is there's a disconnect because they can't hear the Zoom participants like council members on Zoom, and council members can't always hear them. And there's no way to integrate them directly into the Zoom feature because Zoom has its own conference call line. So that's where it gets problematic.
How about if they call would they be able to call the borough number and it'd be picked up, and answered, and directed? I'm not sure. I'm just asking. I'm not even sure what I'm asking. But
Did we encourage people in the spring, I thought, to be able to send in, to email their questions or comments?
Yes,
I know that's not, that's okay, but I realize it's not in the moment. Sometimes something comes up that, they want to say right then. But I don't think we should discourage that. But I do think that we have to monitor this to see how things are going, about whether people will actually really want to, if things get worse, that people really aren't going to want to leave their homes.
Yeah, you're correct. We did have and we always have the ability for people to email a question for a meeting in advance of the meeting through the info through the website, or they can contact me and pose a question, or any of their elected officials and pose a question. But yeah, the info email address is always available for that purpose if they do so prior to the meeting. Yeah.
I know this is not a general meeting, but I just want to comment that I'd like to say thank you to those who did decorate down there at the Robert Morris, which we're looking at behind Justin, and it looks nice. It's very simple, simplistic, but it's very nice.
That's actually from a couple years ago. I just happened to have it.
Oh, okay.
I took my drone out one night to take some photos, and I think I gave them to Scott for the website.
This year's does look nice too. Absolutely.
It does.
Mm-hmm. We've had a lot of compliments about it.
And that was compliments of the business association? I was trying to get the confirmation from that, and I talked to Eric, and he wasn't sure. So,
I think there were a couple of groups involved, but I think Ted was there.
I was there. Yeah, it was a group of residents. The business association. I believe I hope I'm not saying this and it's not right, but I thought the business association got the tree. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was no.
You're right.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Jane,
Well, Jane can confirm that she's there.
Go up, Jane. Jane has something.
If I may, Mr. President, it is downtown. It's beautiful, and the MBA agreed to pay for the tree for this year. We're just waiting to find out how much we committed to. But we were glad to be a part of it, particularly since that is a key intersection in our town for our businesses. Thank you.
Trees were expensive this year.
Yeah, and I think it's 13 foot, 12 foot high. Doesn't look that high from here, but it was big one.
Very ingenious solution to using a live tree down there, a cut live tree, and securing it. It was I was impressed with the engineering involved behind it.
You said a bucket and stones?
Yes, it was placed.
That's what I've been doing for 20 years.
In a 5-gallon
in my house.
A hole
to secure it.
Placed in the pail and then stone around it. There were some wires were put into the ground to secure it, but it allows it to be watered and retain water inside the bucket.
Yeah.
It was a very simple but very smart solution to the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. If nobody else has anything else, I'm gonna ask for if there's anybody who wants to speak from the public.
Jane Berger, can you hear me with this?
Yes.
90 West Maple Avenue. I missed hearing the changes and the increases, so just quickly, the general fund is now 3.5 mils, and the library is 0.5 mil, but I didn't catch the increase for the street fund, and I'm missing one.
Here you go, Jane. If you have a pen handy, I'll read them off to you. The general fund is 3.35 mils.
Okay.
Streets fund is 0.5 mil. Rec fund is the same, 0.85. Library fund is 0.5 mil. And street lighting fund is the same at 0.8.
Okay, and that gets us to 6. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just briefly, like Ted, I am a member of the MMA. I'm certainly not here to speak in any official capacity, but if the borough wants to, through Scott, send a letter requesting an increase, having budgets are one thing, but it'd be very helpful to the MMA to also have the list of the expenditures for the last 2 or 3 years document. I know with the new systems we're going through, AMI, it'll be easier on both sides, because we have it as well, to document the actual cost for doing things, because we certainly do want to pay our fair share for the services that are being provided by the borough to the MMA and its ratepayers. So I remember on council, I remember doing the letter that got you from 5 to 600,000 or something way back when. So we certainly are, as Ted said, willing to listen as long as you have, costs in some semblance of order to show what it actually costs to provide this service to the MMA. I'm sure we'll be glad to look at it and come to agreement. And perhaps, I think someone had mentioned the service agreement. That may be a time to also look to that as well in terms of clarifying what is done by the borough for the MMA as part of those funds for the agreement. And there could be some other additional administrative costs that you might want to work. I'll be glad to talk to you, Scott, on that after. Thank you.
Sure. And actually, so you're aware, Jane, as part of the service agreement, in accordance with its terms, the borough has to provide the MMA with financial data on an annual basis. And actually, I think it was last year or the year before, we agreed that upon their request, we'll provide it to them on a quarterly basis. And we've done that quite a few times. I don't know if we still are we? Yeah. Yes. So Beth gets that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be asking for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't see the audience. Anyone else?
I just want to back to reports for a moment, and we see that on the regular monthly financial. It'll show you how our water fund is going, and so that's another way that we continually track it.
You have no other audience.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else want to add anything? So otherwise, we'll adjourn for tonight. Okay. I don't need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I don't think we need a motion. We're just close it out.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone. See you on the 21st.
Yes.